Chewie. We're home.
I bypassed the compressor.
You were the chosen one!
Something truly special.
Congratulations. You are being rescued.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
The ability to speak might not make you intelligent, but we're going to try to prove otherwise. This is the Clashing Sabers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host. You also know him as the Doc Ondar of Alderaan. It's
Davor.
Davor, it's just you and me tonight. We're going to get to spend some quality time together. How you doing?
Yes. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk some Star Wars. We've got a lot of Star Wars to cover because tonight we're going to be doing a Star Wars report card and looking at how Star Wars has presented itself thus far in 2024, giving it a little grade, and then talking about what it can do to either raise or lower said grade. So it should be a fun little episode that we do here, just kind of looking back at what we've gotten in a little bit more than the first half of the year so far and looking forward to the future. So, Davor.
Yes.
You know we like to ask this question when we get into it. So I'm going to skip all the other stuff. We'll get to the report card later. Let's talk about what you've been Star Warsing lately.
All right. What have I been Star Warsing lately? Well, not that long ago, maybe a couple days, I think maybe end of last week, I finished rereading Shadowfall, the second Alphabet Squadron book.
Okay, and
I enjoyed it. It was good. It was good to revisit it. And again, I had talked about before, the audiobook experience was definitely an improvement, at least for me, in terms of enjoying it over the reading the physical book.
Yeah, especially with like the sound effects and stuff. Like I think you get something extra out of that in the space battles and everything.
Yes, agreed.
So, was there anything in particular that stood out to you more than the first time that you experienced the book?
I'm trying to think for Shadowfall in particular.
Because you're right there in that darker middle chapter,
yes.
Where stuff starts to really hit.
Yeah, it's very much that. It's your classic sort of, you're splitting the gang up and you're kind of following everybody on their own little paths. I think, I want to say maybe some of the stuff with Erica kind of hit a little bit more. I don't know particularly why, and I don't know if I can attribute that to the audiobook experience. But yeah, some of that stuff on Cerberon with her and ITO and Aiden, I think hit a little bit more, like some of those conversations that they were having on the planet.
Is Mark Thompson the one that narrated that one?
No, it's
okay.
I don't recall her name, but it's not one of the it's not a Mark Thompson. It's not, I think, even like a regular Star Wars book reader.
Yeah, I like when they do that though, when they add some variety, especially to something that is. I know it's weird to say this, but that's so different. But I feel like the Alphabet Squadron books are just very different in. They are Star Wars, but the approach to Star Wars is very different in terms of dealing with the mental and psychological issues in a really in-depth manner. And you have your basic tenets of a ragtag bunch of rebels. You have, the Republic. You have the Empire. You have all of those things. But the personal dynamics that it gets into and the character archetypes that it has are just so different. So I like that they give a little bit of flavor there. Do you have like a particular narrator that you prefer, or like one book experience that stands out to you as far as audiobooks go? Because you experience books that way far more than I do.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know in terms of like narrator off the top of my head if I have a particular preference. I mean, obviously Mark Thompson is very good, but he also does a lot of them.
Yeah, he's the OG.
Yeah. So he's the OG. In terms of standout experiences, I would say definitely Path of Deceit is a really, really good audiobook experience. Especially when you get towards the sort of like the end, the sort of turn towards the end. But even throughout, that book is really good. And actually, another book, dare I say, that has quite a unique and distinct audiobook experience is actually Ronin.
You had to bring that up.
I know, I'm sorry, but it is, it's different because they bring in pretty much just a one and done audiobook narrator to do that particular book, and it's quite good.
Well, I guess I should just let the people know you led into it perfectly. We don't have Drew here tonight, and somehow we're still bringing up Ronin because when we went off the air on our last episode, Davor invited me to a little challenge on the Now This Is Lit podcast, and I can't say no, which is a personal problem that I'm working through and paying for that, but in multiple ways, to be clear. But yeah, I'm rereading Ronin to go on the wonderful Meg Dowell's show and talk about it. I'm going to have things to say, I'll tell you that, but we are actually talking about it, and I said, you know what, maybe I'll give it a chance as an audiobook this time. The one Star Wars book that my library does not have in audio form.
No.
Yeah. So I'm rereading it. I've spent about a week or so reading it. I'm gotten 58 pages done, so that tells you about the progress that I'm making. It's fantastic. I can say there is one improvement, and that is I actually know what's going on in the book, which is something to be said because, to be totally honest, last time I got about 100 pages in and had to restart because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand the plot. So maybe me taking it slower is going to be better this time, but it'll be quite the experience. You know, it's been hard on me. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers in my time of challenge, but I'm doing it, and as much as I crap on it, I am genuinely trying to find things to like about the book, because I know that is part of the point of Meg having us reread these books that we might not have liked the first times. And so I am genuinely trying to find things that I like. I will be totally honest and say I haven't found anything other than B5 is pretty great. But, you know, when we get to that episode, when I'm over there, we'll, of course, let everybody know so that they can listen to it and get that experience. But Ronin is definitely not catapulting itself to the top of my list. I'll just put it that way. And we'll see if that changes. I've still got like 300 pages to go for that to change. So, you know, that's always a possibility. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, Davor, do you have like a book that is on your crap list that you just really don't like as far as Star Wars books go? And you can even go into Legends for this if you want to.
Oh, yeah, I will, because my answer is Legends, and it is Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void.
Oh, wow, really?
I gave it a 1 star on Goodreads, and that's only because I could not give it 0 stars.
He even went on Goodreads. I haven't even done that for Ronin. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow me on Goodreads. I don't know. Sure, whatever.
Wow, yeah. No, I actually remember kind of liking that book.
I struggled. It was one of those where I literally dialed up the audiobook speed so I could get done with it fast.
Was it the audiobook itself, or was it just too disconnected from the Star Wars that you've known?
I think it was more the latter. I think it was just like it was too disconnected, and it also had the feeling, and I know I don't have like a deep depth of knowledge in terms of Legends, but I do know just anecdotally that this is the case with other Legends books, is that it really did feel a lot more like a sci-fi story set in Star Wars than like a Star Wars story. And so I kind of struggled in that way with it too.
Yeah, that's kind of what has gotten me with Legends is it does feel very sci-fi and not very character driven, and just misses the it factor of Star Wars in a lot of cases. There are some that I imagine if you take them out of the Star Wars universe and just made them their own sci-fi thing could work really well. But that's kind of what's caught me on a lot of the Legend stuff is I'm not a huge sci-fi person. You know, it's the space opera, it's the fantasy of it all that really gets me with Star Wars. But, you know, it's the hard thing about Star Wars, but the beautiful thing about Star Wars, which is that there's different ways to take it in, and there's different styles of stories. And I think it's totally cool if you like Star Wars more for the sci-fi element of things, and that's your jam. I just personally don't believe that that's the heart of what Star Wars is, and it's not what kind of makes it tick for me.
Yeah, and I mean, to the first point, you know, it's going to be really interesting. Let's say if, because we do have to say, if we do get that Dawn of the Jedi movie that's been talked about, because yeah, like one of the things that really does stand out if you read Into the Void is because it happens literally like hundreds of thousands of years before, you know, the kind of main Star Wars events that we know. It's like the Jedi that we get in there and the kind of just context and environment is so removed from anything that we're familiar with that, yeah, when they, you know, when, again, sorry, not when, if they visit this period in movie form, I wonder how they're going to tackle that in terms of like still making it feel like you're in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's going to be a big challenge, and I feel like they'll go back to Octo, and that'll be an important way to kind of ground it in something that we have already known before. I would not be surprised if it is very early on when we get, you know, a lightsaber going on in that movie, just to kind of ground it more in it being Star Wars. You know, even though it's going to be, 10,000 years or whatever, it's going to be before what we have, you know, I think just kind of like Into the Void does, they're still going to have spaceships and hyperspace and things of that nature that are going to help us really see that it is Star Wars and ground us in the familiar while also showing us how that familiar came to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they can do it. I mean, I know High Republic is not nearly as far back, but I feel like even in the Acolyte, you know, they did a good job of making it feel earlier, and you could kind of start to see the used universe thing. Like I think about the ships, like some of them were, they were starting to get worn, but they also had that prequel kind of new feel to them. And I think they did a good job balancing that, and they've done a good job in the books in terms of, you know, giving us stuff that feels familiar, like hyperspace travel, but then making it different, like, you know, having beacons and them going out and exploring new hyperspace routes and things like that. So they can do it. It's just a matter of, how far removed are they going to make it feel?
Exactly.
I'm excited for that movie. I really need it to happen.
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows anymore?
And then, did you see the James Mangold quote where he said something to the nature of multiverses are like the death of storytelling, and he doesn't know how he keeps getting caught up in making them? Yeah.
No, I did not.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know how I keep getting caught up in these IPs, because multiverse storytelling is and big IPs is the death of storytelling kind of thing. And of course, it came out right when the spoiler alert, Robert Downey Jr. news for Marvel. He's coming back as not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom. And I guess James Mangold I don't know if that caused him to say that or it just was happenstance that happened at the same time, but it kind of got a lot of publicity and it made me laugh. Who would be, now I'm thinking about it, who would be like a major Star Wars actor that you will loosely say want to see come back in Star Wars playing a different role?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you have an answer off the top of your head?
I do. I think seeing Mark Hamill play a Sith would be just mind-boggling. We kind of had that with him being Darth Bane in the Clone Wars, but that would be really cool. You could always cheat and have, your Ashley Eckstein or your James Arnold Taylor come and play a live-action character, but I feel like that's cheating. I think it would be cool to, have just do something crazy, like have Oscar Isaac come back and play, Poe's long lost brother or some craziness. Just make it a whole soap opera. I don't know if it. I mean, I don't know how they're going to use Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, so that could turn out to be really good. I don't know if Poe's brother would turn out to be, his identical twin brother would turn out to be a great thing. But I do think Mark Hamill coming back as a Sith, and you could put, makeup on him and prosthetics and stuff of that nature so that it's, not him, but it is him kind of thing would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other actors, and like he does strike me as one of the ones on the top because he does have, especially in voice acting, he does have such a varied career of playing different characters.
Yeah, he's got a lot of range, and you think about he even does so many voices in Star Wars, in the sequel trilogy. He's got like 3 or 4 different voices that he does, and in Clone Wars he plays Darth Bane and stuff like that. So I think he'd be the perfect option. You could do something with Adam Driver.
Oh yeah,
put a different mask on him, and that could work. Or do some kind of weird like alternate version of Ben Solo in the World Between Worlds or something like that, like a Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness kind of thing with the night walking. There are possibilities. I don't know if any of them are good or if they would just end up being Luke with 2 U's from The Last Command.
No.
Dude, look, I respect the hell out of the Heir to the Empire trilogy, but if anybody tries to claim that those books get better as they go, they are a bald-faced liar, because they absolutely do not. Those books go downhill very, very quickly after Heir to the Empire.
That's encouraging as someone who has Dark Force Rising on hold right now in Libby.
Well, there's that. I liked Into the Void, so you and I, we differ in some places. We both like the majority of Star Wars books, but maybe it'll be for you. If the Luke with 2 U's turns out to be for you, I'll be shocked, but you'll have to report back and let us know on a future Star Warsing segment. But that kind of leads into, talking about books and Star Wars content, leads into what we're going to be doing tonight, which is giving our Star Wars report card for 2025 so far. Or 2024. We're still in 2024, but we are looking forward to 2025 and kind of seeing the direction that Star Wars is going as we inch closer to a new Star Wars theatrical release. Hopefully, as Davor mentioned, multiple Star Wars releases. But we're going to focus on what's come out in 2024 so far. And the format we're going to kind of do is we're going to give Star Wars a grade. We each have our own approaches. We'll talk about in just a second to how we formulated that grade. And then we're going to talk about what is still coming out this year and what Star Wars needs to do to improve that grade or what could lower that grade. So the teacher and me just had to bring out more than just saying like, hey, we like this thing and we don't like that thing. And y'all know we like to overanalyze everything. So that's what we do here at Clashing Sabers. So with that in mind, Davor, do you want to go ahead and give your grade first?
Sure, I can do that. So I thought about it. I mean, in terms of, you brought up, as we, here on Clashing Sabers, we love our criteria. In terms of thinking about how I came up with this grade, I don't know. A lot of it was just kind of vibes, to be honest. I kind of just reflected back on, the stuff that we've gotten in TV and books and, sort of other, other genres and things like that, and just sort of thought about collectively, like, what have been the highs, what hasn't worked, how does it all kind of balance out? And I think right now, the grade that I ended up settling on, and I think I feel pretty good about this grade, is I went with a B+.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's solidly where it is. I think there have been a number of highs, and I mean, I can touch on some of them now. And we'll probably get into more as you give your grade and your reasoning. But I think we've had some really good highs in terms of, for example, Bad Batch season 3. Not of course the fact that it ends, but that it ends as well as it does. That they really do kind of stick the landing with the show. I think that's a really good high. I think Tales of the Empire was quite good. Even though, if you go back to the conversation Drew and I had when we were talking about, I had some reservations about the Morgan Elsbeth episodes. I do still think, we get a particularly strong showing there, and I enjoyed that. The front half has had some really strong entries in terms of Star Wars books. We've had Temptation of the Force by Tessa Gratton. We had what is currently my candidate, even though, we still have a few months ago, my candidate for Star Wars Book of the Year, which is Chris Kempshall's Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which everyone should read because it is darn good. It is a very, very good book. So, yeah, and, there's also, as we talked about in the last episode, you have The Acolyte, which all three of us had mixed feelings on. I actually recently rewatched the whole first season, and even though the things that didn't work for me, sort of some of the things that I talked about in the last episode, still don't work for me, like that didn't change from that respect. I did, appreciate more some of the things that do work for me in the show, some of those bests that I talked about in the best. And so, yeah, I sort of settle on a B+. It's generally, enjoy, but there's still some, again, like with some of the things of The Acolyte and other things that kind of still keep it out of that A range.
Okay. I think that's respectable. I'm not too far off from you. I am at a B.
All right.
I didn't do the plus or minus, just a regular B. I kind of went through the Wikipedia page for what's come out in 2024 so far. And obviously that's got, reprints of books, and this comes out in paperback and 10,000 different, Young Jedi Adventure shorts and High Republic Adventure comics and stuff like that. And obviously don't want to give a grade on anything that I haven't read thus far or watched or whatever. So I stuck with the major releases, and I kind of gave each of them a grade, and then more or less averaged it to see what my score is going to be. So you started the year with Cataclysm with Lydia Kang, and I gave that a solid B. It was a good book. Bad Batch was the next thing. That was an A. As you said, it kind of stuck the landing, or not kind of stuck the landing. It definitely stuck the landing there. Defy the Storm was also an A. That was a fantastic book, and could, I think, have an argument for Book of the Year. When you were talking about that, I thought that's the direction you were going. The Living Force is where things started to change a little bit. That one, Drew definitely changed my opinion on that book quite a bit, and I want to go back and revisit it some more, but I still gave it a C for right now. It just felt like a very mid-tier book. I threw in the re-release of Phantom Menace because I think that was a fantastic idea for continuing
call.
Star Wars
Good
in the
call.
zeitgeist. Yeah, like I think the credit should be given for the decision to put that back out, despite the common language around people hating the prequels and stuff like that, to just show that that's complete garbage. So A there. Tales of the Empire got a B. The Acolyte got a D, and Temptation of the Force got an A. I think Temptation of the Force and Defy the Storm are your Book of the Year candidates as far as what I've read. I haven't made it to Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire quite yet, but definitely after hearing you talk about it, want to try it out. So I gave it a B, even though the majority of the content got an A. The Acolyte makes it challenging because of my distaste for it, as we talked about in the last episode. Are you familiar with the what's called the Michael Jordan North Carolina effect?
Yes.
Okay. So for those of you listening who don't know, if you, and I'm not sure how accurate this still is, but at least in recent modern history, at some point it was true that if you averaged all the colleges and universities in the country, their professional athletes, and how much money they made, North Carolina would be the highest ranked school in terms of average salary that professional athletes make when they leave the school. And that's because Michael Jordan pulls the mean so far into that money-making side of things. So the Acolyte goes in the other direction. It's so drastically bad, and it was such a big project that to me, it has to be weighted heavier than a book. And so it really, unfortunately, dragged it down. I really wanted to give it a C, but I could, my gut instinct was, I really don't like this, give it an F. But I was like, nah, that's being petty. That's being too hard. So I was like, maybe I can give it a C because, maybe, and I just couldn't convince myself to do that. So I felt like a D was appropriate. Makeup assignments and extra credit in season 2, could come back and change that grade. But yeah, for right now, I think the books are just consistently killing it. Cataclysm was solid. It was really good. It's definitely one that I need to revisit because which I plan on doing when I revisit all the High Republic books after we get this whole thing wrapped up. Bad Batch, was great. Even something like The Living Force, which got a mid-tier rating for me, was not bad. Like, I didn't not enjoy reading the book. It just wasn't on the level of the content that was coming out around it. But there is a marked drop once you get to The Living Force, where my grades start to go down. You've got that gets a C. Then you got the Phantom Menace re-released, gets an A, but then you drop down to a B for Tales of the Empire. You drop down to a D for Acolyte, and thankfully, Temptation of the Force, which happened in the middle of the Acolyte, but I counted it as the last thing, gets an A. So, yeah, that's kind of where I stand with it. I feel like this is kind of if you think about school, this is kind of the 9 weeks where the teacher was kind of figuring out how exactly they were going to teach the class. And so the grading is kind of wonky. And I'm saying that not to call anybody but myself out, as I have spent the last week going, how am I going to teach these new classes that I'm teaching, and figuring out crazy ideas that I had. And so I feel like Star Wars was kind of in this transition zone where we're getting towards the end of the High Republic and the Bad Batch and stuff. And we've talked about this a little bit before. You're still trying to put out a little bit of one-shot things, but really you're transitioning towards a phase of going back to the theatrical releases. So there wasn't a lot of things that weren't already pre-planned coming out. And that sounds a little bit redundant, but things like The Acolyte had been planned for a long time and were already too far into production to call it or turn it around into a rushed movie or anything like that. And so it gets out there, but maybe it doesn't have the best effort behind it in the marketing. Maybe it doesn't have the best effort in it in terms of ensuring the story is as tight as it needs to be and things like that. And because the focus has shifted towards more of a theatrical release model. So looking forward to 2024 or the rest of 2024, which we'll get to, is one thing. But I really do think even though the grades have started to dip a little bit, I think as we go into this next phase, we've got the possibility to really make sure that we're hitting straight A's and B's territory in terms of what Star Wars is going to put out.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, I think, like you say, you gave it a B, I gave it a B plus. I think I think that's about it in the sense of there are these highlights from the first half of the year that we've talked about, some of these high points. But at the same time, I don't think, if you just take the 50% of 2024 that we've experienced, it hasn't been a particular remarkable year. If you were to set, if you were to do our episode again and you were that we did last year or maybe the year before, whatever, I was we're talking about the best year in Disney Star Wars. I don't it wouldn't be in the top 5. It wasn't amazing in that way. So it's just solidly beat. It's it's doing the work. It's doing that, but it's not it's not top of the class.
Yeah, it's got a couple tardies, but it's at least in class every day.
Yes.
There is something to be said for that. And I was kind of looking at it. I'm if this is a group project, the books people are really they're carrying their weight. They really
are. Yeah.
The 4 that I have on here are all solid books, and especially the High Republic books have just been absolutely killing it. Even with Cataclysm, we talked about this as the books were coming out for Phase 2, but the YA novels were definitely the superior books in Phase 2. But
agreed.
Saying that is not saying that the adult novels were bad. It's just the YAs were so insanely and excessively good that it outshone how good Convergence and Cataclysm were. But they're good books. They're really solid Star Wars entries. So, they just have been hitting on all cylinders there. And so, kind of thinking about Star Wars moving forward into the rest of 2024, there were 4 main projects that I kind of noticed that are coming out. We've got 2 High Republic books, Beware the Nameless and Tears of the Nameless. We've got Star Wars Outlaws, the open world game, and probably the start of Skeleton Crew. Maybe. Pictures came out for it, so apparently it's a show.
Yeah,
we'll see.
They announced a December 3rd release date.
Did they?
Date.
Okay,
yeah.
I missed that. So at least, well, we'll go off of the model that they've done before. We'll probably get 2 episodes this year at least, maybe 3 to 4. So we could have half of Skeleton Crew starting this year. All of that said, leads me back to the books. Because the books really got to do some stuff to make sure that we get this grade up to an A going into the rest of the year. Because personally, I'm not playing Outlaws. I don't have a gaming system, so I can't really add on credit there. Skeleton Crew is not inspiring a great amount of confidence. It hasn't exactly blown up the socials the way that most of the time happens when new Star Wars content comes out. It's been pretty forgettable as far as the fact that it is happening. And I'm hearing through whispers on the internet, which are always trustworthy, so we can take this as fact, that test audiences aren't loving it thus far. So I've got a lot of trepidation there. But you do have the return of Zoraida Cordova in the High Republic. I'm looking forward to that. You and I have both been huge fans of her since Crash of Fate, and two High Republic books coming out really got to do some damage to make sure we get this up to an A. You're a little higher than I am. What do you think has to be done to get this up to your B plus? Get it that extra point to get to the 90 and be in an A territory.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think the books are going to play a part in that. We should also add to the book mix Glass Abyss, which is the Mace Windu book that is coming out now in November. It was supposed to come out.
That's
in August.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So that also has a lot of potential to be something quite good. We've got a returning Star Wars author, a Legends author, coming back into the mix. So we'll see what that contributes.
And a Mace Windu thing that Brandon is looking forward to.
Yes. So, yeah. So I do definitely agree with you. Like in the first half, as we talked about, the books did a lot of heavy lifting in terms of kind of, raising that overall grade. And I think they will also play an important role in that. I am a person who is into Star Wars gaming, so I'm excited about Outlaws. I'm excited to check that out. We've gotten some early, reviews by folks who have, done some gameplay that has been positive. I'm not like super excited about the like. Well, there's two things about Outlaws that like don't super excite me, which is like one is it being set in the Empire, which is like pretty much a constant for the Star Wars video games, and I would like to see them kind of break out of that. But that's just a personal preference. And then also it's the sort of like the kind of like scoundrel underworld element is not the part of Star Wars that, particularly gets my motor running. But there is a sexy commando droid in a trench coat, which does get my motor running. So I am excited about that.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
That's the most Davor thing you've ever said in your life.
Yes. So there's that. I'm excited about that. I have not yet played it, but yesterday, as of this recording, yesterday, August 1st, the remaster of Star Wars Bounty Hunter came out, and so I'm excited to get that and to play it, so it's now playable on, your PS5s and your modern consoles, because that is a great game that I love very much. So I'm excited to check that out. I did not actually, in the first half of the 2024 look back, I neglected to shout out Hunters, which is a quite fun game that I actually recently have been getting back into, and is it's a very addicting and fun game. So yeah, I am excited to see what the gaming side of things brings up, especially because Star Wars video games are so few and far between. I mean, like the second most few and far between thing, apart from movies, at this rate. So like the video games are very much events releases, because you only get them, every so often. Like once Outlaws is out, like it's unclear when the next Star Wars video game is going to come out and what it's going to be.
Well, it's going to be Star Wars Eclipse. Don't you remember that? That's definitely still coming out.
Good God. Sure.
It comes out, I think it comes out right about when Droid Story does. Yes. I think the release dates are like they're doing a tandem release or something.
Yes, exactly. And then as for, the skeleton crew of it all, at this point, I am in a wait and see position. Especially, I want to see, and maybe, at the time that when this episode comes out, it'll come out the week of D23. So maybe this week, as, in listener time, we may get a trailer for Skeleton Crew at D23. We got the pictures from the People magazine spread, but I still I need to see more things to get a sense of, what we already have a bit of sense just from, again, that magazine piece and the comments that Jude Law and others have made in terms of the vibe that it is going to be sort of this Goonies, Spielbergian kind of 80s, aesthetic that it's tapping into. And so, yeah, I need to actually see footage and stuff to really know. I'm going in it with the perspective of open mind. I want to see what they created, what the story they tell, the performances that we get. But I am also in the back of my mind having the attitude of I may watch this and just find that it's it's not for me, like it's not the thing that I'm looking for out of Star Wars. So yeah, I'm very much in a wait and see stance on Skeleton Crew.
I kind of am too. I feel like there's less weight on Skeleton Crew than there was on Acolyte.
Yeah.
Because Acolyte the idea had been around for a lot longer. And you're dealing with the Force, you're dealing with lightsaber wielding characters, you're talking Jedi, you're talking Sith, we didn't know this going into it, but talking about things connected to a Force dyad in one way or another, at least the same kind of neighborhood as that, even if it's not exactly a Force dyad. So you've got all these elements that are really important to Star Wars, that are really cherished by lore-loving Star Wars fans like you and I, and that puts more emphasis on that show. I'm not going to say it's, canon breaking or anything of that ridiculous nature, but it does impact the Star Wars timeline that we follow a lot more than something like a Skeleton Crew, I think, will. Now, I know at least there was conversation that Skeleton Crew is part of the Mandoverse, so maybe I'm completely wrong, and we get all of these connections, and it turns out to be a Book of Boba Fett where we get 2 or 3 episodes that are actually just The Mandalorian, 3.5 and a half. Really, Skeleton Crew is the prequel to The Mandalorian and Grogu. That's the thing we don't know. But I think because there's not that loaded element to Skeleton Crew like there was to Acolyte, there's less pressure on it to perform as this amazing thing that we were all looking forward to the Acolyte being. And it can be a really solid show and that make it a phenomenal event.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I think I think you're absolutely right about that in terms of like the comparison of like the Acolyte, which had all these years of build-up and, was dealing with the sort of Jedi Sith stuff, and of course had like, the High Republic imprimatur, which ended up carrying more weight as the years went on and people became more invested in like that as a new time period. So it had all of that stuff versus Skeleton Crew doesn't really have that stuff. And it's like, like maybe a good palate cleanser, especially after that, and after these last couple shows, is a more like low stakes, like after the Acolyte, after Ahsoka and the Mandoverse shows and all this sort of like we're building up to these big events. Like maybe we just need the like the fun kiddie romp, that's just a good time and like. It's its own thing over there. Like there's something, we just talked, you alluded to a little bit earlier when you talk about the books, like, Zoraida Cordova and Crash of Fate. Like that's a great book. And that's just a low state. It's like, it's these 2 kids on this planet and the story takes place over like a day. And like that, like there's no lightsabers. There's no like, there's some first order resistance stuff, but like it's kind of in the background. Like it's just this like little like micro story over here. And it's a great time. And, Skeleton Crew has that potential. That's like it's this adventure with these kids, and like there's no galaxy shattering like Snoke's not popping up at the end of it.
We don't know that one of these kids could be Snoke.
Good God!
Just saying.
Yeah, like maybe it's just that sort of like cotton candy fun, and like that's that's good enough. It doesn't like not everything has to be like the greatest thing or like completely change canon or how we perceive Star Wars for all time.
Yeah, and I hope that it doesn't get undue pressure on it because of the reaction to the Acolyte.
Right.
Like it's not Skeleton Crew's job to make up for shortcomings people may feel towards the Acolyte. And like the Acolyte very much has its vibrant supporters, and it has its detractors, right? And there's not a lot of people, I think, that just say, "Oh, the Acolyte was okay." Like, it was fine. It was just a fun, like you were saying, fun romp or whatever kind of situation. That division doesn't necessarily mean that it's Skeleton Crew's responsibility to bring the fandom back together and have everybody agree on the greatness of something like you had in a Mandalorian season 1 or something like that. That's not its responsibility. Its responsibility is to go out and tell a really good story, to have good production value that immerses you in the galaxy and, you know, is a good time. Like, that's what it's supposed to do. And I worry also about the discussion that we have around it and the comparisons they're making to Stranger Things and stuff like that. Like, I get what they're saying, but when you're throwing names out there like Spielberg and Goonies and Stranger Things, I feel like you're asking for more pressure to be put onto the show than is necessary. You've already got a lot of elements that can put pressure on it already. You know, you've got Jude Law in it. You've got, like, what I talked about with the Acolyte underperforming and the numbers dropping pretty drastically from the start of the Acolyte to the end of the Acolyte. If you look at those streaming numbers, it was a huge drop off from 1 to 8. It was if I remember correctly, it was the biggest drop off they've had thus far. And so I think a Skeleton Crew can be good enough to retain its viewers across the entire season. Whether you start with 1 million or you start with 3, maintain those viewers. I think that will be a victory for the show. And I think that will be a sign that, you know, at least this project was done right, and maybe even the future of Star Wars television, whatever that looks like. We have no idea what that looks like beyond the end of Skeleton Crew, which we can imagine will finish sometime in beginning of 2025. We have no idea what Star Wars television looks like after that. So I think that also adds an element of pressure onto Skeleton Crew, because it's like, we don't know what the next animated show is going to be, if there's going to be one. We don't know what the future of live action looks like outside of Ahsoka season 2, you know? And so there is a lot of pressure on Skeleton Crew in that sense. So I don't know. I guess my point is just, let's let Skeleton Crew be what Skeleton Crew is trying to be, and not put a whole bunch of extra weight on it because of superfluous elements that have nothing to do with the production and value and execution of the show.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
So we didn't really plan this, but I wanted to throw this out here and just see what you would give it. What would you grade your Star Wars experience this year? Just like you Star Warsing, what would you rate it?
Oh, let's see. How would I rate? I think I will stick with the B+.
Yeah?
I think that's about right, which is like, I've enjoyed the highs, and we've talked about a bunch of the highs. There have been times where I've not as enjoyed much, or found myself, like, frustrated with certain elements of things. But I think overall, again, it's that high B. I've had a good time. Again, it's not like been an especially remarkable year thus far, but it's been good. So I'll stick with that grade.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of caught for me, because up until the Acolyte, it was a solid A. Because I had the chances to reread things like Rise of the Red Blade. We've got all the great content that we talked about. I've been able to podcast possibly more than I ever have before, which is always great, because it's just an hour or two of sitting down and talking to your friends about stuff that you love. So very rarely do I sit down at the microphone and be like, this is not something I want to do, like that. So getting to do that more is great. The stuff we've been able to do with the nonprofit's been awesome. Getting to spend time in real life with, Zach and Lindsay was fantastic. And I'm hoping that becomes something we all can do more, all of that kind of stuff. So then there was a drastic drop off with The Acolyte and now rereading Ronin. And I don't need to belabor the points that I've made there. So I'm kind of in a weird place to grade it. So I do think I'm going to stick with the B right now, with a high probability of it getting up to an A, because I really do think I'm going to enjoy all three of the books that are going to be coming out. Having George Mann back, having Zoraida Cordova back, having a Mace Windu book the Mace Windu product that I've enjoyed the most was Shatterpoint. So I think Mace Windu in a book is something that I'm going to enjoy again. All of that stuff. I didn't even mention, I've been playing KOTOR, which I kind of fell out of for a little bit, but I'm going to get back into that hopefully. So I think I'm heading back to an A. I think this is kind of like the slump in between Thanksgiving and Christmas break. I don't know if you know what I mean, where it's
yeah.
One vacation ended and you don't have enough momentum to get into everything else before, and into a routine before the next vacation. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And, I love Star Wars and I'm excited when we get to have good content come out that continues to excite us, but it's always great to be able to also have enough time to go back and revisit other things, whether it's something for me missing KOTOR and getting to experience that, or getting to reread old favorites like Rise of the Red Blade and having the time to do that, because to me the content has been more paced out than ever before. And I like that. I like that we're not rushing from one show into the next show and one book into the next book and all of that. Giving us some time to kind of breathe and digest and things like that, and have a little bit of a break to, I plan on going back and revisiting the Clone Wars and doing a rewatch of that. So hopefully I'll have enough time to do that before we get to Skeleton Crew. That is something that really adds to my Star Wars experience that I'm really looking forward to being able to do. So I guess I'll bump mine up to a B+, to be fair.
All right, cool.
So,
nice.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to talk about on tonight's episode, or things that you're looking forward to? What's the thing you're most looking forward to in 2025, do you think? Is there anything off the top of your head?
Oh, 2020. Well, 2025 is already shaping up to be quite a strong year, I think. I mean, we now know most of, what we're going to get in the front, the first half of 2025. We got a bunch of book announcements at San Diego Comic-Con. We've got the conclusion of the High Republic to look forward to. I don't want it to end, but I'm also excited to see how they wrap it all up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, in terms of what we've got to look forward to, we don't, as you said, we don't know much yet about in terms of the on-screen side of things. We're thinking probably Andor season 2, but again, we don't know. Summer or fall, winter, when? Probably sometime in 2025. And at the moment, that's it, so that we know of at any rate. So I think what is the thing that I'm most excited about so far in 2025? I think maybe it is. I'm going to say maybe Trials of the Jedi. I want to see how Soul sticks the landing.
Yeah, that's really 100% me too. I was literally just thinking when he's done talking, I'm going to say The Return of Charles Soule, because come on, everything the man touches is just freaking gold. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And it'll be exciting to see. We'll be here talking about it and of course sharing our love of the Star Wars galaxy. It's fun to take a look at things from this angle, in kind of the macro, because we get so caught up in the micro sometimes as we analyze and pick apart things and try to look at it from different angles and perspectives like we like to do here and bring different ideas to the table. but it's also nice to kind of zoom out a little bit. So we'll have to make Star Wars Report Card a consistent element of the Clashing Sabers podcast, and come back to it in 2025, maybe after the end of, well, we're not really getting an end of the High Republic. We're getting an end of like this High Republic initiative, but they've made it very clear they're going to continue telling stories in the High Republic era, which is exciting. So we'll come back and do that. And if you want to make sure that you are a part of that, you can, of course, always follow us on the socials and see what we're doing there. Pretty much everywhere we are at Clashing Sabers. You can, of course, subscribe to the network on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this episode, and get all of our episodes in one feed, including the fantastic audio drama that Mark is putting out. He's got 3 episodes out thus far, and let me tell you, the 3rd episode is the best one so far and above. And that's saying something, because the first 2 were absolute bangers. So make sure you're subscribed there. And then if you got the time and an extra $1 to $3 to $5 a month that you can spare, head over to our Patreon and support our efforts to put Star Wars books into classrooms across the country. With the start of the new school year, it's always a great time to show teachers some love, show that you love and support what they do. And maybe you have a kid and you want to, get in and help your kid's grades, get the teacher a box of Star Wars books for free by going over to ClashingSabers.net and nominating your kid's new teacher, and we'll send them some books, and everybody will be happy, and you won't have to buy them a Christmas present. There you go. You're welcome. Davor, if people want to find you, where can they find you on the socials?
All right. You can find me over on X, at A Large Review Pod. Follow me there. You can also listen to me as a co-host on Space Swifties, a Star Wars and Taylor Swift podcast that I host with my wife, the one and only McDowell,
who I will be joining on her podcast sometime in the near future, which I'll tell you guys about when it happens.
So excited.
It's gonna be a ride, but we're here for it, and that's what we love about Star Wars. We didn't talk about the unannounced project that we know about that's coming out later this year. You know the one I'm talking about? Batch 8, the Batch 8 show?
Hi-ho.
Dude, a Batch 8 show would be great.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Every episode is them in an elevator, just awkwardly talking to each other. All Clashing Sabers productions are the intellectual property of the Clashing Sabers Network and ClashingSabers.net. All licensed sounds and images are the property of their respective copyright holders and are used for informational and educational purposes only. For more information on our nonprofit or to nominate a teacher, go to ClashingSabers.net. For questions or inquiries, please email us at ClashingSabersNetwork@gmail.com.
You're just going to walk away?